my fellow readers. Today I'm going to talk about the book A Spell of Winter by Helen Dunmore, sorry. This one I kind of stumble upon, and I don't remember how, but I think maybe I was looking for a gothic story, and I just did a search. I have read Helen Dunmore before. I read The Birdcage Walk, which I liked, but I don't know. It didn't fill all of the things I wanted. It didn't tick all the marks, and I think it's because the little teaser summary didn't match what the book covered, and so I was just a little disappointed. But it was well written, so I didn't mind checking out this one, which was actually the winner of England's Orange Prize for books. This was actually the inaugural winner of England's prestigious Orange Prize. So good on ya, A Spell of Winter. I was just reading the back blurb. So A Spell of Winter is a compelling turn-of-the-century tale of innocence corrupted by secrecy and the grace of second chances. Kathy and her brother Rob have forged a passionate refuge against the terror of loneliness and family secrets, and while the world outside moves to the brink of war, their sibling love becomes fraught with dangers. But as Catherine fights free of her dark present and haunting past, the spell of winter that has held her in its grasp begins to break. Yeah. So this is a gothic novel, and it has a very claustrophobic feel. We follow Rob and Kathy, as it said there, who are siblings and living in this little town, and inside of the home of their grandfather, especially after the death of their father, but also years prior to this, their mother ran away, and is out in the world somewhere. When I first started reading this, I'm like, is it going to turn out that the mother's dead? Because it just seemed weird how people would talk about their mother to Kathy. It almost sounded like they were hiding something, but no, their mother just ran away. She had been having several mental health bouts throughout their childhood. We don't see a full thing of this, but you know it. They'd be like, their mother would go to bed with headaches or whatever. And at one point too, Kathy reminisces about thinking her mother would never hurt her. It's a whole thing. So I think at some point, and especially thinking that this is on the brink of World War I, where mental health issues weren't necessarily known how to treat. They could lock people away in sanitariums, but it wasn't seen and treated the way it is now. So at some point in one of her fits, their mother just couldn't take it and she fled, and apparently has been doing much better since leaving. Meanwhile, because she left, their father wasn't doing too well. And I think it does turn out too that he ended up with tuberculosis, I think, because the few glimpses we get of him, he had been in a sanitarium, and I think it was for consumption, it's revealed. But he does pass away, and then suddenly it's just Rob and Kathy and their grandfather. And their grandfather, has been dealing with a lot of tragedy with the death of his own wife, and then his daughter, running away. That he's just kind of an interesting character in the background, but for the most part, it is Kathy and Rob, and they are stuck in this small town and in their home for the most part. They do have a maid that is an ever-present character as well, and is introduced right in the beginning, who is Kate. And there's a whole thing about how she's Kate and Kathy's Kathy, but they're both kind of derivatives from the same name. So anyway, so Kate's in the background as kind of a mothering figure, even though she's not that much older than the two of them. And the three of them together get into all sorts of things. That sounds weird, but they'll just, since they were growing up together, like Kate was both a playmate as well as a mothering figure. Now, because they are so isolated, there is an interesting relationship that develops between Rob and Kathy. And I think a lot of this also goes, and they sort of speak of this, to different obsessive kind of mental health traits. And I think Rob says about the way that they love. Like they don't love easily. Or like if you love someone, you'll love them until pretty much your destruction. Which was more like how their father was, whereas their mother fled. So there's just some interesting conversations there. I'm not going to spoil too much about what happens in the book. It does get very dark and twisty. And yeah, there's all these secrets. And again, how I was saying about like how people talk to Kathy and like, there's things that are being hidden from her. And on top of that, Kathy, she's our main character that we follow, but she's also very like obsessively controlled by her, I'm going to call her tutor, Miss Gallagher, who, is very, very like claws in to Kathy and expects her to be a certain way and like devote herself to Miss Gallagher. And Kathy's not about all that. And there's like references said that I don't know what Miss Gallagher was expecting from Kathy. Like there's just sort of this dark feel about that. But again, you can also tell that they're like hiding stuff or something from Kathy. I don't know if they're afraid of her own mental state or if they just think they need to protect her because she is young at this time. I can't remember if she's only like 16 or so. I think she's around 16 when certain events occur, but there's like, I think a bit of time jumping, a little bit. I can't remember exactly. But yeah, it's interesting to me. I liked the feel of reading the book because you have like this kind of tense feeling while reading it about what will happen next. You definitely feel how enclosed they are, even though there is this town. It's a small town. There's not many people there. And even though Rob and Kathy are moderately well off, they're not the super rich, but it's enough to where they could potentially marry into richer families. But at the same time, because they're not the super rich, like they'll hold parties and whatever, but because they're not super rich, there's also stuff that they have to take care of on their own. And there's also that kind of feeling of I don't want to say that they have imposter syndrome, but almost similar to that, where they do feel like they'd be lying to the potential spouse about how their prospects are. And I think that does create more isolation for them, because I feel like they feel like they can only be themselves when they are with one another. And it all adds to that isolation, that claustrophobic feel, and also their codependence on one another, because they don't feel like they have anybody to turn to. I almost feel like Kathy a little bit less so. I think that she had more potential for reaching out to other people, but because of her age and because of her very deep love for her brother, she didn't necessarily want to reach out to other people, if that makes sense. Like, she almost felt like there would be a betrayal if she crossed any lines about talking too much about the family or what was going on, or even just outright sought to get married and go off somewhere else, because they also feel responsible for the home. It's their family home, and their grandfather will eventually pass away, so who will take care of that home? There were times when reading this where I was wondering like how things could be resolved cleanly. There's definitely like the feel that something tragic's gonna happen, or maybe lots of something tragics, because you can't see how things could resolve in any other way. But it does have a, I guess, clean ending. So I won't give away like how it ends, but it resolves itself. What I like is this quote on the front from the Los Angeles Times, who I almost feel like did not read the book. But it says, "A Spell of Winter reads so much like Jane Eyre that one feels one ought to shout, 'Charlotte Bronte is back.'" No. Very different. I could see Helen Dunmore being compared more to either Anne or Emily Bronte, who I think were a little bit better at the dark side of humanity. Yes, even though Mr. Rochester kept his first wife hidden in an attic and didn't tell anybody, and I think is overall a terrible person, but I mean, he got his redemption, so maybe it has to do with that. Well, there are thematic similarities with the Brontes. I think the messaging is slightly different and will be presented differently. This is a good Gothic tale, though, that will keep you invested in it. There may be parts that people find disturbing, but I liked the psychological aspect of questioning that whole thing. So, yeah, can't give away more than that. If you'd like, give it a read. I think you can only find it in print like this. Usually I like to listen to audiobooks. I like to read too. I mean, I'm doing fairly well with the reading this year. But I think you can only find it in like the paperback like this. I got mine from Amazon. I'm trying to remember. I'm like, it's still like in print, right? This wasn't a weird. So I got mine from Amazon. It wasn't a pricey read. It's just paperback. I don't think you can get it in any other edition other than paperback. But yeah, I actually like this. I thought it was good. I enjoyed reading it, and yeah, it's gonna go in my Gothic book pile. That's it for this video. Until next time, bye.